And this is what guys really hate, when you have females in a business who are then alpha females. And it was the most unwieldy, bad way of selling ever. And of course, the words they wanted me to use were not words that came from me. But I don't love a woman selling like a man. I just believe it's a book that needed to be written. There isn't anything really for women to get hold of, to understand what is the things that make the difference in their selling ability. I'm not going to attempt to sort of suggest my book to anybody that wouldn't benefit from it.
Suzi Seddon, welcome to the Inspired by Show.
Thank you, Chloe.
Good to have you here. I feel like, for a bit of context, we've worked together for quite some time. I know a lot about you, given that we published your most recent best-selling book. But I'm excited that we can finally catch up on camera.
Yeah, no, it's great. These things are a little bit scary pants to me, but hey, I'm up for it.
It's like writing a whole book didn't really faze you, but coming on a podcast.
No, that's interesting, isn't it? Because, there were times when it was like, well, can you catch up? And I caught up overnight.
Yeah.
It's just... I don't know. You respond to different triggers, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. So obviously we are going to talk a little bit about your story, even though I know a fair bit of it. There's always questions I never get a chance to ask people that I love to ask on the show. But as you know, the Inspired by Show is specifically for entrepreneurs or speakers, podcasters, authors that want to write a book. And so when I get a chance to interview someone that I've actually worked with, helped you write your book, and then obviously publish it to get to #1 on Amazon, which is very exciting. Another #1 bestseller on our show. Before we go into the book process for you, I'd love to just find out a little bit more about your inspiration for your book. So obviously, Sell Like a Woman is the name of the book, right on your shoulder there. Why Sell Like a Woman? Why was that the book that you decided to write?
Gosh, we're going to have to go at warp speed back in time to too many years before the year 2000, when I was starting out in the world of sales, and I went to work for a company, and they were very centric on, you sell a specific way, it's this way, it's a pre-scripted way, we want you to get this, this and this out. And they had one of those horrible presenter packs. I don't know if you know what I mean. It was like a zippable up thing that you unzip, turn into a sort of triangle that you put on the table between you. And it was the most unwieldy, bad way of selling ever. And of course, the words they wanted me to use were not words that came from me. And I couldn't sell like that, Chloe. I just couldn't sell like that, because I'm very intuitive, very go with the flow person. When I'm talking to somebody, I'm feeding off everything I'm getting, whether it's the body language, the words, what takes their attention while I'm speaking to them, which is never good if somebody does that. But, it's the whole thing you're drawing on to really present what you have in the best way. Quite often I'll start a conversation by talking about the things behind people or on the bookshelf. Something to break the ice real fast. That's what I'm looking for. So when it came to me selling, I had none of that. I wasn't allowed to use any of my intuitive skills. And I thought, crikey, how am I going to do this? Well, of course, it was hopeless. So eventually, my sales didn't go very well, to be honest with you. At that point, they'd gone from very good to, when I joined this business selling the services of IT contract staff, it nosedived because of this reason. And I was full of woe, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and she said, hang on a minute, Suzi, you are so good with people. What is going on here? And you know what, Chloe, it was like a light bulb going off in my head, and I thought, I am really good with people. What is going on? And I suddenly realised I'd been dragged into this pre-scripted world, kicking and screaming, not being me at all, not able to use my, my innate talents, what I call my feminine superpowers, to be able to connect with those people naturally, authentically, etc. And so when it came to writing a book, it was the most obvious thing to talk about.
Yeah. Do you know what? I love that, because one of the things that I think a lot of people don't want to talk about is selling without a script. That's one of the reasons when we spoke about your book, I loved the idea. And when you pitched me your book, I was like, we're in, because every sales experience I've ever had, bearing in mind also a woman selling in a male dominated industry, you know, speaking on stage and selling from stage, or selling a service or an agency, which we do with publishing, I was always doing sales training. It was like, here's your script. Do this, look at them this way, sit this way, and it was just like, I mean, don't get me wrong, some of it is strategic stuff that makes sense, right? And tactical things. But if you get on a conversation and you're reading a script and your eyes are moving and somebody can see that, or they can just feel it, I've always just felt it feels really icky and uncomfortable, especially as a woman with or whatever gender you are, having feminine energy. If you're naturally using feminine energy and you have to change it to sell, the results don't lie, right? Interestingly,
what else happens is that once you get a kind of, if I can say, a masculine script, you tend to, your whole body language changes, and then you start to try and push your voice, which also sounds a bit over the top and a bit pushy. So the whole thing is then changing. Even though you think you're doing a pretty good job, you're not doing a pretty good job at all, because you've just changed personality, you've changed the whole gambit. And this is what guys really hate, when you have females in a business who are then alpha females. That's what that is.
Yeah.
You know, we only have to go back a few years, well, actually not a few years, quite a few years, to sort of the war years, when everybody went off to war, and then, you know, all the women were at home sort of fiddling with their plugs and whatever else they had to do to get the family and the home sorted and things. And of course, the war hierarchy in the army, etc., was very much you know, a strict sort of, you report to you report to you, whatever. So when people came back, the world that we created as women suddenly had to be dismantled again, because the guys were coming back and they were bringing with them the hierarchical way of doing business in an office. And I remember my father, you know, he went to work. My mother didn't leave me till I was 16. Wow. You know, she didn't work at all. And she was the norm, not, you know, the opposite. So I think when it comes to thinking about that, I'm just going off on one here.
Don't worry.
I'm just thinking that when you are sitting in your feminine power, it's your natural power. When you're not sitting in your feminine power, you're sitting in something that isn't natural. It isn't you. They aren't your words. They aren't your actions. And everybody can see it and read it.
Yeah. I'm curious, Suzi, from your perspective, obviously you've been in sales for quite some time, that you shared in the book. You've also mentored quite a few different people in sales over the time and seen what's worked and what's not worked. I think a lot of time we have to unlearn things as much as learn them.
Yeah.
But from your perspective, when it comes to sales, is there the right approach being only feminine energy or only masculine energy? Do we have to commit to one or the other?
No, we don't. I mean, clearly there are times when you have to pull a little bit more of your masculine energy. But what I'm trying to say is, you know, stay with what you were born with. There was a reason you were born with it. And that's where your power lies. You know, men are the same. I love male salespeople, fine. But I don't love a woman selling like a man, as it were.
Yeah. It's a really good observation as well, because, you know, when we're saying being born with it, I always lean, yes, we talk about women and men, but I always lean on the energy, right? It's like, if you're trying to force the wrong energy, like if you're natural, I've met some women who are really masculine and they sit really well in their masculine energy. But it's if they're forcing it that I think sometimes it clashes, right?
It's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, it goes against the intuition that essentially they could tap into and get much better results.
I think that's the thing. I mean, I think any of us will pick it up just like that.
Now, I just wanted to quickly interrupt this episode to share a quick message with you. Now, I've been hosting these interviews with Inspired by Show for a while now, and I've been loving all of the great feedback from our listeners. And it really means a lot when you all share from listening to these episodes, watching these episodes, share your incredible feedback. And I love that you love it as much as we do. Now, my mission for the Inspired by Show is to inspire others to challenge the norm, share their story, knowing that it's okay to be vulnerable and shock horror, take the mask off and be raw and real. So I have a favor to ask. Can you help me on this mission by sharing this episode with someone who you think needs to hear this message? Maybe there's a friend, a loved one, a colleague, or someone that you know that would really benefit from hearing this inspiring story. If you could do that to help us, help even more people to challenge the norm and push themselves out of their own comfort zone, then I'd really appreciate it. So if you haven't already, share this episode with a friend, a loved one, a colleague, or someone that you know would benefit. Now, back to the episode.
If somebody is not sitting in their centre, as I call it. And my job is to really understand what's going on with a person, that they're not getting the results that they're hoping for, and seeing if I can spot what's going on. And many times it's because of this pushing the energy in a way that's not natural to them. If I met them in a coffee shop, they would be a completely different person. And yet, you know, you put them into a sales situation and this rather sort of pushy sort of face comes over them and it all goes a little bit wrong.
Yeah.
So, you know, we don't stay in our feminine hearts, we go in our masculine minds.
Yeah, so true. Now, Suzi, I'm curious from your perspective, I think a lot of what you shared comes down to confidence, right? It's like trusting your intuition is something I hear so much. And it's about being confident that you know what you're doing and that actually you don't need to listen to the script. You can follow your own intuition.
Scrap the script.
Exactly. But what often I find is that's the bit people struggle with, right? Sometimes it's hard to be confident and trust your gut and your intuition. Have you always been quite confident, or have there been times where you've had to build it up, or you haven't been the confident Suzi that we've got sat in front of us?
Goodness. I would say I appear on the outside to be like that, but I'm not what would I call myself? A quiet achiever. So I've never shouted from the rooftops about anything I've ever done. It's just not what I do. I am a great observer. I watch people. I watch how they interact. I'm very on the metal, as I would call it there. But you know, yes, of course I've struggled. You know, my mess is my message. You know, I learnt the hard way. I had to piece all of this stuff together. I could see so many people around me struggling in the same way as I did years and years and years ago. And slowly but surely you learn different bits and pieces, different techniques or whatever to calm yourself down, to make yourself feel more confident. But that comes with, I think a lot of it comes with people questioning you and bringing things to the forefront of your mind. You've probably heard things before, but you've never really processed them. So I think there's some of that going on as well.
Yeah, definitely. And what I notice as well is there's usually, from interviewing lots of people, whether it's for their books, whether it's for the show, I find that there's usually a moment, like a breakthrough moment for a lot of people that define a lot of their journey. You know, whether it's to quit a job, whether it's to leave a relationship, whether it's to write a book, there's usually a moment where they go, screw it, like this is a sign. Have you ever had any moments in your life that have been really transformational, whether it's positive or negative, to actually force you to sort of step out and do something different?
Yeah, I think there was one time when I was working in IT contract recruitment, and there was a guy, let's call him John. In fact, his name was John. And John went abroad because he thought the goose that laid the golden egg was over there to earn loads of money, and he took his family over there, and he was really expecting to earn mega bucks. I mean, he was already earning, you know, £1,000 a week or something at the times, and that was years and years and years ago, and I'm not going to tell you how many. But the point was, he went over there full of full of hope and dreams and all of the good things. And, 6 months in, he rang me and said, Suzi, it's, I'm still looking for something, because I keep in touch with people. And I said, okay, keep in touch, whatever. Anyway, it went on and on. A year went by. He rang me and said, I'm really going to have to send the family home now. I'm getting through the money far too fast here. Okay. Another couple of months went on, and he said, I'm coming back to England. I said, when are you coming? And he said, Tuesday. I said, right, okay. I want you. I said, in Heathrow, where there are those sort of escalators, and all down that corridor, there's either toilets or phones. I said, I want you to go to the first phone that you find along there, and I want you to phone me straight away. Promise me you'll do that. And he said, okay, thinking I was a bit odd, probably. Anyway, he did, and I called one of my big contacts in London, and it makes me quite emotional, actually. I thought, I've got to help this guy. So I rang up and I said to the manager, if you don't take anybody else from me this year, I want you to take this guy on my say-so. That was a defining moment. Wow. And he said, done. I'd got lots of staff with him. Normally he would interview everybody and decide whatever. This time I said, he's got this, he's got that, he hasn't got that, he hasn't got that, but I know he can do the job. He said, that's good enough for me. And John came over and he phoned me up, and I said, right, get yourself down to whatever in London. You've got 60 minutes to get there. And he said, what? And so he went off down there, and of course the rest was history. He said, how the hell did you do that? And I said, sometimes you just have to go 1 over the 8. You just have to be brave.
Wow. And I can see why that is a defining moment, because you've essentially put all your cards out.
Oh, yeah.
Complete trust on somebody else. We've all been there at times where we're like, what if the person doesn't deliver? Or, we put our neck on the line. What was it about John that made you think, do you know what, this is the person I'm going to put my neck on the line for?
Well, he'd worked for me twice before in 2 different companies. I knew that the managers both times loved him, wanted him to stay, and he wanted to move on. I knew he was very flexible in what he could do. There were lots of things you get to know about people, and this is where the relaxed side of me, the authenticity comes out when I'm chatting away and saying to John, so what's really important? And he would tell me about what's important with the family, or what was happening, or this, that, or the other. So you start to take all of these golden nuggets, as I call them, and you put them in your back pocket until you need them. So when it came to that job, I knew I was making the right call.
Wow. And that's where the intuition comes back in, right?
Of course. Yeah. But you don't have to necessarily grab all these amazing things and think, right, I've got to deliver this now, straight away. No, it might be 2 years down the line. So it's an investment. It's an investment in people. It's an investment in yourself, really.
And also, like you say, it's an investment, and it's about being patient about doing the right thing at the right time. One of the things which I found very different when I was helping you and working on your book is using your intuition to sell. Because a lot of people, I was always trained to take emotion out of sales. Take emotion, take intuition. Emotion will cloud your judgment. That was a lot of stuff that I was taught. What's your views on emotion in selling and as essentially using your intuition?
Well, you can see how it got me. I mean, it's many, many years since I got that job for John, and it gets me in the heart. That's when you serve people. It matters to me. And that's what I'm trying to instill in other people. You've got to be selling in a market that means something to you, with people that mean something to you, or services or products or whatever it is you've got to sell. That's why you can't sell a product you don't believe in, because what won't layer behind it is all of the enthusiasm or need to do a good job or provide the best,
Yeah. It's like if you were to sell something you don't believe in, you've got to put so many masks on and so many layers on.
Exactly.
It's going to crack eventually.
Yeah. It's like you should have gone to acting school.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Basically.
And do you know what? That's one of the things that I often struggle with, because we're very similar, right? I've got to feel it in order to publish a book with someone. And people always say to me, Chloe, you can't speak to every author that you're going to publish. Yes, I can. You can't read every book. Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Because for me, I've got to feel it, and I've got to feel. People say to me, do you not need to read the whole book before you decide to publish us? I'm like, no, I publish the author. Like, I know I can believe in an author, but the hardest thing is, and I can totally relate to you, sometimes I want it more than the author does.
Oh,
I get to know them and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be so good. How do you not realize how good a book this is going to be? But for whatever reason, they don't believe in themselves. A bit like that John situation, I've put my neck on the line for many of our clients, got them fantastic opportunities with their books. And sometimes they're like, are you sure I can do this? I'm like, yes, you can. Go and walk on that stage and talk in front of those people. Like those hundreds of people, they're ready for your book. Go. And they're sort of like borrowing my belief, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
so
well, I think I get that. It's sometimes you do have to do it that way. And sometimes you do have to be brave and you do have to put all your chips down on the table. But quietly, just behind that edge of fear, you can do it. When you've got the golden nuggets, you can do it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like knowing, and it's knowing that comes from your intuition, essentially. Now, we're talking a lot about intuition and energy. I want to ask you, as someone that is incredibly intuitive, how much did intuition play a part in actually coming up with your book? Like, because I know obviously when you work with us, there's quite a timeline to work with writing your book. And you were always fascinating, because sometimes you were like, didn't do anything this week. And I was like, oh no, we're going to be behind. And then next minute you'd written loads. And I was like, what? This is so inconsistent. Which as a publisher was a headache at times, not going to lie. But it was great. We got the result.
Sorry.
But how much of it was intuition or it coming from somewhere?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think there was only one time when I was actually thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to write? I'm right on the deadline. What am I going to write? And I thought, come on, get a grip. Just calm down. I've done a lot, as you know, with energy systems and meditation and all sorts of things. And I thought, just clear the space and know that something will drop in. And usually it was about 3,000 words.
Perfect. On the mark. It's exactly what we want to send to the publisher. Perfect. I love that. Exactly. And what about deciding to write the book? Like, where were you before you decided to write the book? And then what was happening that made you go, do you know what? I'm going to write a book.
I just believe it's a book that needed to be written. I've been watching, obviously, for years as a quiet person. I've just been, foraging away and thinking there isn't anything really for women to get hold of, to understand what is the thing or the things that make the difference, that will make them far more attractive to in their selling ability. And you only have to look around the country or the world. Most sales trainers are men. Now, that's fine. I love men. But the thing is, I'm a woman. So when you get the mixed energy, that's where the problem comes. It's the female nurturing heart, the intuition, the troubleshooting, all of that, the warmth, versus the masculine energy, which is, right, I'm going to fix this. It's very prescriptive. I want to get the script. I want to get it all sorted, and I want to close. I hate that word. I say to all of my people, if you do your job right, you'll never have to close anybody. They'll say to you, how do I work with you, Suzi? And it happens all the time.
Yeah. And funny, since you've said that, that's exactly what I've experienced. As soon as you actually get away from, I must close every person I speak to, or I must close these people, I massively believe in look for the no. Like, I'm forever going like, okay, are they going to disqualify themselves?
Yeah, exactly.
Because then it actually becomes more of just a conversation.
Yeah. There's as well, I think there's far too much persuasion going on in the world. I'm not averse to influence, but I am averse to persuasion. That's not great. So, you want to be opening somebody's mind up to consider other avenues, other possibilities, other services, other products, whatever. and you may think this is great, but ultimately the decision is theirs. Your job is to make sure that they have no unanswered questions by the time that, you know, they get to the point of making the decision, because the only question that can happen at that point is, are you going to buy it or whatever?
Yeah.
But if you've answered the questions and it's a right fit, they'll walk themselves into the sale.
Yeah, exactly. And you talked about their, you know, persuasion. For me, I've seen so much manipulation go on, you know.
That's the other side of it, isn't it?
And it's an extreme case, but I have heard some horror stories of people that are going out to manipulate people. And I just think when it comes to selling, you just end up getting buyer's remorse. People will just go, do you know what, actually, you'll celebrate and go, yay, you know, these clients want to work with me. And then a week later or less, they'll go, even they might wake up the next day and go, what have I done? Please have my money back.
I agree. I mean, you know, one of the worst things that people can do that they don't spot early enough is they don't go after the right fit client. They think to themselves, oh, all of these people are going to be a right fit, and they're not a right fit. And you have to be really clear, really, really clear on who your right fit client is. Because if you're not, you end up spending time with people, you know, trying to get them to do this and trying to get them to do that. It's never going to work. It's never going to work.
Yeah. And then you end up, like you say, squeezing it in to fit into someone, and then you end up compromising, and then it's not going to actually
That's right, exactly.
It's going to be a lose-lose rather than a win-win.
Yeah, it is. I mean, all of the excitement energy goes out of it, and then becomes stress. Well, that's certainly not what we're about.
No, not at all. And I love, because obviously we've been in detail through this in your book, but I love how I've seen this come through, even how you've written your book. And you're always a very honest person, Suzi, so I'm super curious. What was the book writing journey like for you? And were there any like surprises or unexpected things that sort of happened along the way?
I think the first thing to say was I was lying on a sunbed somewhere gorgeous, thinking to myself, I really want to excavate. Am I still with my right fit client? I have to do this on a regular basis too, you know. It's not just what I say to other people, because your right fit client does change as you change, as you get new skills, as you go into new markets or whatever, you do change. So I was doing an exercise on holiday, and I started off thinking, oh, I'll do a bit of journaling. I hate journaling. Anyway, so I was doing a bit of journaling, and the next minute I had 10,000 words on the pad, and I thought, maybe I should do something with this. So that's kind of where the whole sort of book writing thing was born. And honestly, I think the whole that hardest thing was actually the title of the book. That was the one that really took some getting it out there, because everybody, I'm quite sure everybody goes into the, is that going what are people going to think about that, or what are people going to think about that, you know? So there was a lot of procrastination on my part about the title of the book. But once I got into writing it, I realized how much I knew. You know, as I say, I'm a quiet achiever, so I don't take on board that I know a lot. Yet you start writing, and suddenly 30,000 words later, you know, boom.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre.
Do you know what? I love that you shared that though about the title, because one, the title's amazing of your book. Like it's just, it shouts exactly what you want. But I see this happen with authors all the time. We have sort of like two extremes, and obviously a few in between. One, which is like, I know the title of my book and I'm going to write a book about that. And then the other, which is I've written a whole book, or they might write a whole book with us. And by the way, I don't normally force people to name their book at any point during the writing journey, because normally it comes up. They're writing a chapter, they feel like they've said a few things enough times, and then they go, that's the title. But sometimes that doesn't happen. And I've had clients, authors, who have written their whole book, we're about to do the cover, and then our cover designer's like, so what's it called? And I look at the author and I'm like, have you come up with a name yet? And they go, I didn't know how to do that bit yet. It hasn't come up yet. But then it becomes so much pressure, right? Because it's like, how do I know what title to do it? And then I can't change it afterwards. And then, so what does that mean? What if there are other books with the same title? What if people get confused? And it just, there's so much pressure, I think, on the right book name.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was quite lucky and I fell into the right time to name it, which was not at the beginning and not at the end. It was like I'd written sort of half the book and it was like, right, I now need to think about the title because I want to make sure that what I'm writing reflects the title and the title reflects what I'm writing. And I could see lots of red flags coming up for waiting until the end. So I was quite pleased that I cracked that one.
But it worked really well because then in your book, you've then referenced the phrase. And I think that's the most important thing I say to most of the authors that work with us or even authors that are writing their own and plan to do their own routes for publishing is your title needs to flow in the book, right? There's nothing worse than having a title of a book and then you go, what does it even mean?
Yeah.
You know, I love with my title, Just Write the Damn Book. It took me so long to name it. And as a publisher, you think I'd be pretty damn good at it. And I was overthinking it so much.
Yeah.
And then one night, I was in a hotel room because I was speaking at an event and I just was stressing so much because the team were like, Chloe, you know the deadlines we give to clients. You need to pick the name by tomorrow. And I was like, what? I'm speaking on stage and I'm not going to have time and I've got to do my slides and all that. And I just remember lying in bed and I looked up at whatever the ceiling was at this hotel room and I was like, what do I say all the time? And all I kept getting was just write the damn book.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's it.
That's exactly the point though, isn't it? That's exactly your intuition working and thinking, I knew this all along.
Yeah, exactly. But then obviously the process isn't over then. A lot of people think, oh, thank God I've written the book and it's done. Now what? You know, how did you find the process of letting go of the book and actually trusting that it was ready to get published?
I think because I'm a deep thinker, I don't think it would have actually made it there unless I hadn't been over it in my head 10,000 times. So I was cool. Once it was done, it was done.
Yeah. You're quite good with accountability though. You know, like you're very like...
I'm glad you're saying that now.
Yeah. If you'd asked me a few months before the book came out, but you're very good at like, you've given me a deadline, I'll do it. You know, there was no BS coming out like, oh, I've been too busy and I get a lot of it, as you can imagine as a publisher when we've got dates and deliverables. So did you find it helpful having someone like almost knowing that you had your publisher and your team waiting for the book? Did you find that helpful to like push you?
Oh, I think it's always good because, you know, it's not easy to climb a mountain, is it? If you're going up in one, it's bad enough coming up the stairs here. You want to be going step by step because then you feel that you're making progress. And there's a point at which, you know, the tipping point is, okay, I'm around half the book. So how does that feel? It's taken me X months to do this. Does that mean it's going to take me X months to do that? Not necessarily, but it gives you some sort of a marker. So, and of course, by then we were on the runway for, okay, if we can get this done by whatever the date it can be published is whatever. So that's easy. You're moving towards the publication date now. That's great as long as you're over that halfway line. I think if you're before that halfway line, I think that's a bit tricky.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many opportunities at which in the process you can doubt yourself. You know, I see so many, you mentioned about a halfway point. I see so many authors get to halfway point and then either change the style they're writing because they're now thinking, I need to impress my peer group, or they need to rewrite something because it's not good enough and they're doubting themselves. And it's a bit like you talked about the right fit client. We often have to remind ourselves who we're writing a book for, that we're not writing it for our peers. We're not writing it for the other experts. We're writing it for the people that need it, that don't know what we know, you know?
Yeah.
And then that can also get in the way of releasing it. Did you ever have any sort of limiting beliefs pop up or like imposter syndrome kind of style voices making you think, do you know what, who do you think you are writing this book?
You know what? Something recently came up about that, and I, right out of my mouth came, I know that I know enough. And I think that was it. I think you know when you know enough to create a book. Yeah.
What sort of stopped you from listening to that? Like, because when you said, I know that I know enough, there was a lot of strength and assertiveness in how you said that. So where do you think that strength came from?
I think it's back to golden nuggets. I think if you pack away these things behind you, you know, that in your journey along the way. So if you've got X number of chapters down, if you've got sort of inspiration for the next 5 chapters or whatever, these are little golden nuggets. So you can pick them up and pop them in when you need them. But if you've got nothing, it's like a squirrel nutkin, isn't it? If you've got nothing, no nuts in your bag, there's nothing that you can feed. So I think that's the thing, just making sure that you pick up relevant pieces of information along the way. And I'm always scribbling notes and things when I'm thinking about, slide decks or what I'm going to teach to my club people or what I'm going to teach on a new program. I'm always looking at the opportunity for why would somebody need to know that? As you often reminded me. Why would somebody need to know that, Susie? Yes, that's a good point.
That's probably the question I say to every author, because so many times as authors we can come up with
there's the title of your new book.
Yeah, exactly.
Why would I need to know?
Yeah, it's so true, because we often write and we just let it go, and that's good.
Yeah.
But then we often have to come back to so what? I'm not going to say the name, but I was reading a book recently. I like to read books that are not my client books because I like to still learn about it, about anything really. I'm a bit of a book person. And I was saying to my partner yesterday, I was reading this book, and I always do the audio and I get a physical copy so that I can scribble on it or whatever. And I just said to Cedric, I was like, this book is so badly written. I teach the content quadrant, the 4 things every chapter needs. They only had 2 of them in every chapter.
Oh, goodness.
And the whole time I almost got my red pen out and I was like, so what? What can we do with this information? Why do we need to know this? It was like just waffle. And I was gratefully that we didn't publish it.
That was a really good reminder. And, it was a discipline. Once you'd anchored it with me, it was a discipline I stuck with. I think I told you, I sort of copied and pasted that at the front of every chapter so that when I was sort of going through that chapter before I submitted it to you, I made sure I could answer those questions.
Yeah, exactly. And do you know what? It's quite funny because we were working on your book, the first drafts, as I was writing Just Write the Damn Book. So it was really interesting. I was maybe one-to-one mentoring 5 authors at the same time, all in a very similar timeline.
Yeah.
And it was really insightful because I could see various things that you all said were useful and you all said would be helpful. And so that's what went in Just Write the Damn Book, because that's where the content quadrant came from, was from mentoring you guys.
Okay.
And it was really interesting because it start to see, and this is something I recommend to a lot of people now, is if you don't know what to put in your book, mentor people on your topic, go and do talks, do podcasts, see what advice you give, and that goes in your book.
There you are, your golden nuggets.
Yeah, true. Very, very true. And it was those golden nuggets that I was experiencing helped me put that in the book. But I think there's always more that we can share, isn't there? There's always more. How did you know or stop yourself from going, no, one more chapter. There's something else that needs to go in here? Because I see that happen a lot.
How did I do? I don't know that I did do that. I think I was sufficiently down the track with where I knew I was taking it, that I knew when it was done. I mean, that sounds a bit glib, but I didn't get to the point where I was like begging you, can I do another 5 chapters?
Yeah. Susie's like, I'm done. Take it. It's yours. You do the rest.
Yeah, you do the rest.
Yeah. It does happen though. It's quite interesting. We tend to it depends on how strong our boundaries are and how confident we are as well. When you know your process, like when I was writing Just Write the Damn Book, I originally wanted to put more in it. I wanted to talk about publishing and also getting paid with your book. And as I got about halfway through, I was like, this is 2 books. Like, this is way too much to really do the so what and make it all valuable. So I think it's a bit of a journey. I'm curious, Susie, where are you going now with the books? Obviously, you hit number 1 on Amazon. Let's first of all talk about that. As someone that is a number 1 best-selling author, what was that like on the launch day and how did you feel going through that?
Well, surreal, obviously. I think it's something you don't really see yourself as becoming. I mean, the thought that keeps coming into my mind is every time I'm sort of out for lunch or dinner or whatever, I look around in the restaurant. Obviously, I'm not paying any attention to the person I'm with. And I'll look around and I'll think, you know what? I'm probably the only person in here who's a number 1 best-selling author. And that's a bit weird. But I sort of like, feel all warm and cozy about
Right.
that. But as I say, I'm a quiet achiever, so I don't sort of stand up in the middle of the restaurants going, gross.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But it is, I think it's one of the few things in business that you can achieve that everyone just gets.
Yeah.
Everybody knows
Yeah.
what a book is. Everybody knows that it's fantastic to be a bestseller. How were people around you, either when you were decided to write the book or when you achieved bestseller?
Oh,
How were your
goodness.
friends and family?
Why do you want to do that? Why do you think you can do that? What do you know that I don't know anyway? It's like, what? You know, and you really have to, it's noise, and you have to turn it down. Turn the dial down on them, darling. That's what I say. I mean, you can't afford to listen to other people. I mean, people come at it from a different perspective all the time. It may be a little bit of the green-eyed monster. It might be, really? Do you actually know anything about that? You know, even my own good friends probably don't really understand what I do. It's a very, very interesting one. I always talk about when people are trying to find that descriptor that they you know, you bump into somebody at a party or a dinner or a networking event or whatever, and they say, "What do you do?" That's one thing I really get people to work on, because if you can't get that out in 20 words or less, that's a problem. And if you can get it out in 20 words or less, it means the person you're talking to won't glaze over and just think, I want to talk to somebody else over a left shoulder, or you know, they at least have the nuggets that they can then feed to somebody else and say, well, that's not for me, but I know somebody that would be really good for.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like people often think they're clear on what they do, but actually not a lot of people do actually know. That's one thing I've noticed with publishing books, because I'm always looking for the top line, because I'm not the reader. Most of the time, I'm not the ideal reader. Ironically, for your book, I was, which the amount of times I was reading a chapter and then I was going into a sales call, I was like, I'm going to give this a go, you know? I joked about it with you when I was editing the book with you. But often people don't know what you know. And so I see this a lot of the time, and it happened with me and it's happened with you, and I see it loads of authors. Their family don't really know what they do. And then suddenly they understand what a book is, and they're like, I don't know what you do, but now you want to publish a book. And they can't compute. They can't see the connection. They're like, who do you think you are? What are you doing? And actually, if we listen to those voices, it can actually stop people in their tracks. I'm sure there are so many fantastic books,
there are.
Probably best-selling authors in the making that have not even started because of those voices.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, you're going to get a dose of imposter syndrome big time if people around you that you know, love, whatever, actually have got no idea about what you do. I mean, the only person I would excuse on that is my mum, and she's coming up to 100 this summer, and she thinks I'm in advertising.
Well, in some way.
Well, it is in some ways, and it's just like, how much am I going to argue about this? But obviously I'm not. But you know, it's just really interesting. It's always a good reminder that if you aren't really clear, people get very unclear about what you do, and they can't actually say what you do. Somebody I worked with who really influenced me on this was a brand specialist about 1,000 years ago, and he was working on at the time the Toys R Us account, and it was before they were Toys R Us, and they were a big sort of department store, and they put a focus group outside the front door saying, you know, I want to go and you know, if you were going to go and buy a children's toy, where would you go? And the people right outside the front door were saying, oh, well, I'll go down there, go three roads on the left, and this, that, and the other. And, you know, it was hysterical. And until they changed the brand to Toys R Us, nobody knew what they did.
Wow.
They thought they sold children's furniture.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it?
It's fascinating. And that made a huge impact, had a huge impact on me.
Yeah.
So being very clear about what you're doing and your messaging, getting a really clear message, making sure that whatever circumstance you're in, that if somebody says to you, what do, you can really nail it in a very few words. It's not about waffling on, because you're just going to send people to sleep. If you can just anchor it, then not only you will light up the eyes of people who really want to take your service or whatever, or they'll say, I know somebody who wants it.
Do you know what? I'm giggling a little bit as you were explaining that story, because I had this recently with some family. So even being in business 7 years, up until I've properly branded as a book publisher, because we've been publishing books for 4 years, but we were branded as like a shadow publisher, which is just a mentor. Then we'd have like a VA team behind the scenes. And only in the last year or so, year and a half, have we jumped in and gone, we're actually a book publisher and we publish best-selling books.
Yeah.
And since I wrote Just Write the Damn Book, my dad's a plumbing and heating engineer, 70, and he's still on the tools. That's another conversation. And he randomly called me up one day, and I thought, why is my dad ringing me? Like, my dad doesn't live anywhere near me. Like, we check in, but he never calls out of the blue. And he goes, Chloe, I'm at this guy's house. He's really well off, and his wife wants to write a book. And I've told him about you, and he's just Googled you, and she's bought your book. When you come over, it was for Christmas. When you come over for Christmas, I know you've got loads of plans. We're going to see loads of family. But I'm going to take you up to the house and we're going to have a chat and you're going to give us some tips on her book. Is that all right? And I'm like, on one hand, I was like, oh my God, my dad's just got me a potential new client. On the other hand, I was like, it's Christmas. Like, what, Dad? We're having a break. But it just proves the point, right? Is that if people aren't clear what you do, and actually books massively help them get clear on that, because then they go, okay, so what did you write a book about? I wrote a book about how to sell like a woman. What did you write a book about? How to write a book. It's so clear that people can then use it to explain what you do better.
Exactly.
Because if they don't know how to recommend you, how are they going to ever mention you to other people?
Yeah, it's hopeless.
Yeah. Exactly. I feel like I could have this chat with you all day long, Suzi. And one of the things that I really love about your experience in this as well is that you haven't just sat down at your desk and written a book and, just been like, yeah, I'm a best-selling author, whatever. You actually lived essentially your dream lifestyle throughout this book process. Every time we had our calls and you were in a different part of the world, I was like, where are you now? This is amazing. And you took your book on holiday. So how was it, like, now publishing your book, being on a sun lounger, enjoying it, and sort of tell me a little bit about what it's been like post-launch?
Oh, well, yes. Well, of course, that was when I took the proof copy away with me, and I had these little sort of sticky blue things on each page where I wanted to sort of make an adjustment or a tweak or whatever. Some guy sort of a couple of sunbeds down said to me, is that book any good? And I said, I hope so. I wrote it.
Or I'll be having words with my publisher if it's not.
But it's a bit weird to say it, because everybody sort of swings round and looks at you, and it's all a bit weird, really, but funny all the same.
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing that often I find with authors. I don't know if you find this, but I'm often so excited for an author who's about to launch because I know what it's going to be like. I mean, we've got a plan of their launch day, as you know. I'm very strict with what they're going to do at each point, which I'm obviously not going to share here, but it's very somewhat regimented, but quite structured. And you know the investment of time that goes into a launch.
Yeah, I do.
When you was like, go to sleep, Suzi. We've done well. You can rest.
17 hours is enough.
But what I often find is people don't quite realize when it's happened. So like, they might do really well and then be like, oh, I'm a best-selling author. Still sat in the same seat. I'm still logging into the same computer. And, might get takeaway to celebrate or open a bottle of champagne, but I think a lot of people expect it to feel different and expect to have this new sense of energy. What was it like for you and what did you expect?
Again, I think because I'm me, I just sort of took it as it came. I didn't really, it never started landing with me until people said, aren't you writing a book? And I said, well, actually, I've written it. Well, actually, I'm a #1 best-selling author. And the words get stuck in your throat, especially if you're just a little bit sort of like a quiet achiever person. It's like, what? People would sort of shout back at you and you'd say, well, I don't know it. I wasn't one to shout from the hills about it.
Yeah.
It was just an extension of what I do.
Yeah.
And as I say, my biggest takeaway on that was just looking around a room in a restaurant thinking, yeah, and I bet I'm the only one in here.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Do you know one of the things that I find really good though, and I think it's important to say, we keep talking about being a #1 bestseller, right? And you genuinely earned it. Like you were flat out, you're quite a quiet achiever, but you're not phased at asking, going,
No, there's
right,
a lot
like,
going
come on,
underneath the surface.
I remember us being like, right, let's look at your launch strategy, how it's going. And it was okay at the beginning. And I remember being like, right, Suzi, let's put our heads to this. How are we going to really launch you? And then next minute I blinked and it was like the numbers had skyrocketed. People were buying, were going astronomical. I was like, how the hell did you do it? But you are not afraid of hard work. And I think I've got to made it really clear here. There are people out there that just get all their friends and family and all create 10 Amazon accounts and all buy copies and they become a bestseller with 1,000 copies that no one's ever actually read. No real person who's going to read it. What was your views on actually doing it the right way, doing it the ethical way, and actually asking people who you know are the right fit to buy the copies?
Gosh, I think it's the thing of service again. If you're not in your product or your business for the right reasons, you'll go all around the houses and not the way that you should do. So I as I keep saying, the thing I concentrate on most with clients is service. So I'm not going to attempt to sort of suggest my book to anybody that wouldn't benefit from it, because it wouldn't feel right, and I couldn't do that just because of the way I am.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's why I think that everybody's got to just plug into really knowing and loving what you do. It's called, it's called work for a reason, but you've got to love 70% of what you do, at least, if not more. It's no good just to be in it to earn a salary. That's not the way to become a best-selling anything.
Yeah, definitely. And also it's like with a book, it's not like you make millions off one book copy.
No.
So it's not about selling it to people just to pay you. It's actually about them getting the result, because they're more likely to work with you in your club or in other places with whatever an author's selling. If they love the book, they're more likely going to work with you and buy other stuff. Whereas if you've got a book written with AI that you've written in half an hour, that you've published yourself and got someone else to buy 100 copies, or 1,000, and you get bestseller, that's not going to hit anyone's solution, yours or the client's.
No, a lot of people are slow burn about what they learn in a book. So there was one lady that rang me up as a result of buying the book, and we were having a little bit of a chat about it, and she said, I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the actual extra exercises, which we direct them to on online resources, to try and get them to practice some of the what I preach, I guess. And she really loved that. So it's interesting watching how people interpret your words and what you do, or what spurs them on. You and I felt it was important to include some of those exercises, and I don't know if a lot of people do them, or maybe some people don't because it's a different sort of book or whatever. But for me, that has proved to be a real sort of important aspect.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, Suzi, because so many people, it's one of the things I recommend when you're writing a book. The book isn't just pages in between two other glossier pages. For me, it's about what else you can add value to. Not everyone likes to physically read a book. Some people like to listen. Some people like to do worksheets. But if you can create more of an experience, so as you experience with us, I always recommend having some sort of online worksheets people can access, or meditations or videos or something you can embed in the book that helps them create more of an experience. And I'm exactly the same. With my book, when I added in like the book writing templates and some worksheets and stuff to actually help them write their book, they've not even finished reading the book and they're already getting results. And the same with you.
Well, think about it. That provoked the woman to actually pick up the phone to me. And what's better than that if you're in sales?
Yeah, exactly.
There is nothing better than somebody ringing you up.
Yeah.
Rather than me ringing her saying, oh, how do you like the book, whatever.
Exactly.
That I would probably work a little bit more on that side of things for any potential future book.
Oh, I sense a potential future book in the pipeline. What intuitively is coming to you, Suzi, for another book?
Well, I was thinking about this before we met up. I think what I think is one of the most important aspects of selling is mindset. If you're just not in the right place, it's a problem. You know, if your mind's, you're scampering ahead of yourself, or you're tripping over those thoughts, or you're getting scared about whatever, you know, getting yourself in the right place takes you so much further, so much faster. You know, you can convince yourself. Many people who enter the sales market say, I just got to get some leads. No, that's like 5 steps down the line. You know, you've got to make sure that you love what you do. You've got to make sure that you can, you've got a clear message, as we were talking about earlier. Because without the clear message, you don't get the right people coming towards you. So if you go out hunting for leads based on an incorrect persona of the type of person you want, that's a waste of money for a start.
Totally. Yeah.
So, you know, people get things a bit twisted. And I think, you know, the mindset thing is really important. Get your mind in the right place. Think about the things, build the foundations, and then you'll thrive.
Oh, I love it. I also think mindset is a huge part of life in general, but because we're all selling something. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, you're selling your partner on doing the dishes, you're selling your kids on doing the chores, you're selling people on ideas you've got in your employer, or even anyone, right? We're all selling something. But we need to believe in it first. So I'm very excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, how exciting. Well, we'll have, once you've finished your bubble, once you're over the whole,
I might even have the title for it.
No way. Oh, we'll have to cover that off camera then. Very exciting. So Suzi, thank you so much for coming on the show. We've truly been inspired by you today. And I've loved chatting about your book after now, working on it with you for so long.
I don't want to stop doing this.
Yeah, I know. And
do another
now she's not afraid at all. She's like, keep me on the show. I love it. But Suzi, we have been really inspired by you today. So thank you so much. Now,
appreciate that.
Final question, which we ask all of our guests.
Oh, heavens. Okay.
She's like, I like it at the moment. Let's end with a bang. Who do you know that has an inspiring story that you think we should have on the show next?
Oh, hands down. Somebody I met a number of years ago who became a Paralympic gold medalist, who has a story which is going to blow everybody's head off, basically. He is so inspiring, and what can I say? Oh, he has overcome so much adversity. You know, it's ridiculous. I mean, his journey of health and healing, he should have an Olympic gold medal for that, let alone the one he got in London 2012.
Wow.
Yeah.
So maybe we can get him on the show next. What's his name?
David Smith.
Well, David Smith, let's see if we can make it happen. Thank you, Suzi. How exciting. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, lovely. We'll have to get you back for more, maybe after book 2. We'll see. Thank you so much. Well,
thanks a lot, Chloe.
Guys, what an incredible interview that was with Suzi. One of my favourites when we're really diving into the book writing process. And actually, one of the things I loved with what Suzi shared is what it's really like when you become a best-selling author, and actually how you need to believe in yourself in the sales process, scrap the script, and actually do what you know you can do to really serve people. So if you have enjoyed this episode, and if you haven't already, do make sure if you're watching on YouTube that you share in the comments what has been the biggest golden nugget that you've taken from this episode today with Suzi. And if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or tuning in on YouTube or anywhere else that you get your podcasts, do make sure you subscribe and follow so you don't miss our next inspiring author. I'll see you next week.